Too late for flowers. I was screaming into the intercom outside the locked HOA gate, my voice hoarse, hands shaking, watching two paramedics hammer at the keypad like they could will it open through sheer force. My dad was inside, 100 feet away, dying, and the damn gate wouldn't budge. And standing just beyond the black iron bars, arms folded like a stone gargoyle, was the HOA president, Sandra Whitmore. She looked right at us, ice in her veins, and said the words that will haunt me for the rest of my life. Policy is policy. 3 days later, my father was dead. 3 months later, the lawsuits started raining down like biblical judgment. And 6 months after that, Sandra Whitmore lost everything. This is the story of how she killed my father and how I dismantled her empire, one smug violation letter at a time. It all started on a Tuesday. Those days always had a cursed vibe anyway. I was already in a bad mood, stuck on hold with the DMV, listening to robotic hold music when my dad called. His voice was off. My dad was a stubborn old Marine, the kind of man who thought ibuprofen was a government conspiracy. He never complained. But that day, his words were slurred. He said he couldn't feel the right side of his body. He couldn't see straight. I didn't wait for more. I hung up and called 911. Then I peeled out of the office parking lot like a bat out of hell, my tires screaming against the pavement. Dad lived in one of those gated communities, the kind with manicured lawns, strict dress codes for lawn ornaments, and an HOA that thought they were the United Nations. You couldn't sneeze there without submitting a written notice in triplicate. And, apparently, not even emergency vehicles could get in without pre-authorization. When I got there, the ambulance was already outside, the gate lights flashing but sirens silent. The 2 EMTs stood helpless at the keypad, trying every code, pressing buttons, hitting the metal box with their fists. Nothing. It was like trying to argue with a locked door. I jumped out of my car, heart slamming against my ribs, and ran up to them. I pressed the call button on the intercom. It rang. Once. Twice. Then the camera blinked on. And there she was. Sandra, the HOA president. She looked like a cross between a wine mom and a drill sergeant. Perfectly pressed blouse, blonde helmet of hair lacquered in place, a face like she'd just stepped in something offensive. She glanced from me to the EMTs and said, "This vehicle is not registered with the community. Emergency or not, it must go through the proper channels." I screamed into the speaker. "He's having a stroke. My father is dying. He needs help now." She looked down at a clipboard, an actual clipboard, and replied, "Residents are responsible for ensuring guests and services are pre-approved." And then she hung up. The gate didn't budge. Not even a twitch. 13 minutes passed before someone else, another board member, thank God, overrode the system manually. 13 minutes. The ambulance roared through and I followed them, tires squealing on the pavement. I bolted into my dad's house, yelling his name. He was on the floor. One arm twitching, the other limp, his eyes half closed. The EMTs did what they could, rushed him to the hospital. But it was too late. The stroke had spread. He never regained consciousness. 2 days later, I signed the papers to take him off life support. On the 3rd day, I buried him. At the funeral, I didn't cry. I couldn't. I was too angry. And then, like a slap to the face, a wreath showed up on my doorstep. No card. Just a folded violation notice tucked inside the ribbon. Apparently, my lawn had grown half an inch too high during the 3 days I'd been at the hospital. That was the moment everything inside me shifted. The grief calcified into something sharper. I stopped mourning. I started planning. HOAs are bullies with clipboards. They depend on everyone else following the rules while they bend them in secret. They assume no one will fight back. But I wasn't just a grieving Sony, was an estate planner with a minor in property law and a whole lot of time on my hands. I started digging. Literally. I combed through their charter, bylaws, county records, city ordinances. And guess what? That gay, the one that locked out an ambulance, was installed illegally. No emergency override system. No compliance with local access codes. Technically, every second it stayed locked during an emergency was a lawsuit waiting to happen. But I needed more than legal theory, I needed receipts. So I talked to neighbors. Casually at first. Walking my dad's dog, throwing out a "Hey, did you hear about?" here and there. The stories poured in. A neighbor's dog died in a house fire because the fire truck couldn't get through the gate. A pregnant woman lost her baby after being denied an Uber at the gate. One couple was fined $100 every time their college-age daughter parked her car facing the wrong direction. It wasn't just about my dad anymore. This was a pattern, a system, a chokehold disguised as community management. Then came the letter, certified mail, a formal citation, emotional disruption of community harmony. It read, apparently yelling at paramedics was grounds for discipline. That letter was my green light. It proved she wasn't just heartless, she was dangerous and reckless. And I had it in writing. 2 days later, I filed a formal complaint with the city. Not a lawsuit, not yet. Just a review request of their gate installation. Spoiler alert, no permit on file. Then came the fire marshal's report. Then the ADA violation claim. I didn't throw one punch, I launched 1,000 tiny attacks. All legal. All surgical. All precise. And then the knock. A man in a suit. Slicked back hair. Sunglasses indoors. You've been served, he said, handing me a thick envelope. Sandra was suing me. For harassment. Defamation. Disruption of neighborhood tranquility. She filed it under the HOA's name, meaning the whole board was now legally entangled. I stood there on my porch, holding the folder, and smiled. She'd made her biggest mistake. She made it personal. What Sandra didn't know is that I don't just get angry, I get strategic. Her lawsuit was a joke. A fragile collage of HOA buzzwords and half-baked legal jargon. She claimed I was undermining community morale and weaponizing grief for personal gain. Nowhere did it mention that her gate had blocked an ambulance. That a man had died. So I lawyered up. Denise Wexler. HOA slayer. Calm, brilliant. A master of polite legal destruction. When I handed her the lawsuit, she chuckled. Oh, she's in for it. We filed a motion to dismiss. Then a counterclaim. Wrongful death. Negligence. Emotional distress. Obstruction. And the cherry on top? A public accountability suit. Now it was in the news. HOA blocks ambulance resident dies, read the headline. Suddenly I was fielding calls. Former board members. Journalists. A retired firefighter who said he'd experienced the exact same delay. And Sandra? She issued a press statement so tone-deaf it echoed. While our community mourns the unfortunate circumstances, we must uphold the importance of order and procedure. Order. Procedure. As if my father's death was a paperwork mishap. The city launched a formal investigation. Turns out, their emergency override had been non-functional for over a year. Strike one. The ADA team followed. Multiple violations. Strike two. Then came the insurance audit. The HOA's liability insurance had lapsed 6 months ago. Sandra had missed the renewal. Strike three. And she still strutted around like nothing had changed. Still handing out citations. Still calling board meetings. At one meeting, she accused me of running a coordinated smear campaign. Lady, I wish I had that much free time. I recorded everything. Every word. Every email. Every passive-aggressive flyer. Meanwhile, Denise subpoenaed their financials. We found gold. Sandra had been reimbursing herself for community representation expenses. Spa visits. Fancy dinners. Boutique hotel stays. We handed the records to the city attorney. And then karma. A city inspector stapled a bright red violation notice to Sandra's front door. Unpermitted koi pond. Landscaping fraud. She was officially living under her own tyranny. More board members resigned. One left a note taped to the clubhouse. I didn't sign up for this. And then came the real bombshell. Linda Brooks. Former board member. Nervous voice. Asked to meet. She gave me a flash drive. Emails. Memos. Transcripts. Proof that Sandra had deliberately delayed emergency services. That she'd threatened other board members. That she doctored entry logs after previous incidents. My father wasn't the first. Just the last. This wasn't civil anymore. It was criminal. Denise amended the lawsuit. Fraud. Criminal negligence. Sandra was being sued as an individual now. Her house, her car, her bank accounts all at risk. Her lawyer? A mall commercial-grade clown with a slogan and no backbone. Sandra cracked. She stopped attending meetings. sent out panicked emails, then snapped, accused neighbors of betrayal, of conspiring, of being anti-community, whatever that meant. We kept piling on. More testimonies. Expert witnesses. A paramedic from another city who said he'd flagged that gate 3 years ago. Sandra's deposition was a disaster. No pearls, no clipboard. Just a broken woman trying to dodge the inevitable. The city revoked the HOA's license. Sandra was done. The gate was torn down piece by piece. Residents cheered from porches. Someone passed out cupcakes. Sandra moved out a week later, tail between her legs. Her house sold at a loss. She now lives in a gated apartment complex somewhere else. The irony is Shakespearean. But it wasn't over. Linda called again. Another flash drive. More communities. More deaths. Sandra's poison had spread, so I started a foundation. The Emergency Access Initiative. No more locked gates. No more blocked ambulances. We got legislation passed. Required emergency overrides in every gated neighborhood. I stayed in my dad's house for a while. Not because I loved it, but because he built it, brick by brick. I turned the front yard into a memorial garden. Quiet, peaceful. And when I visited the spot where the gate once stood, I found a bed of marigolds planted where the keypad had been. My dad hated flowers, called them weeds with ambition. But I think he'd approve of these. Because they meant something had changed. Because now no one dies behind a keypad. And no one ever will again.